The summer in upstate New York in 2024 was, by turns, hot and sunny and very wet, which made a perfect growing environment for plants, including the grass in my lawn. It also hatched out a fresh crop of cicadas like this neon lacewing. My brother Matt had gifted me his old string trimmer, which was an Echo GT225 that he couldn't get running and keep running. And after a little troubleshooting, I determined that it was the gas bulb. So I found a refurb kit for the fuel system online, and I set out to fix up this old trimmer, giving it some new life and helping to clear up the edges of my property. I hope to show in this video that with a little ingenuity and a few cheap parts, you can take a broken piece of machinery and turn it into a fully functional tool. The kit that I bought was pretty affordable, but it came with a brand new air filter, a full set of gas and vacuum lines, including filters, a new spark plug, an extra filter for the gas line, and a few unnecessary parts that I wouldn't need for this build. It also included the thing that was causing all of the trouble, the fuel bulb, that helps you to pump gas from the tank into the carburetor. This bulb had dried out over time with age and cracked, causing an air leak in the fuel system and spoiling the gas mix. 9/64. Just an Allen key. 9/64 is the size. There are two 9/64 Allen screws that hold the airbox on. One goes completely through the carburetor and is very long. The other one is short and just mounts into the engine block. I'll remove both of these and swing the airbox out of the way to give me easier access to the rest of the motor. Loosen that up. No need to remove it and lose parts. This gets it out of the way and lets me get to the screws for the next step. Phillips head screwdriver. There are 4 small screws holding the plate on that secures the air bulb. We'll take those out and put them in the plastic bag that the parts came in so that nothing gets lost. I'm going to leave that one loose. Keep one attached, that way I can control when the plate comes off. Instead of, if I had taken that other screw out right there, this whole thing would have fallen. Now I can take that last screw out. Leaking a little bit of gas, but that's going to happen. This is the broken bit. Got a crack in this bulb. These dry out. Yeah, you can see it there. They dry out and then you can't get pressure. You have a leak. I'm gonna get a paper towel and I can clean these parts off as we go along. This is an Echo GT225. I believe the only difference between the GT225 and the SR225 is the shaft. This is a bent shaft, and the SR225 is a straight shaft. Other than that, I think they're pretty much identical. So there's the new clean part. That's going to go back on like that with our new bulb in it. So put the bulb in, I'll set that aside. I think the fuel lines and everything else on this are working fine, but I got replacement fuel lines with the kit. as well as a replacement spark plug. There's no reason, since I have it apart, to not take those out and fix them, other than it's going to add a little bit of frustration to the job. Now, the video that I saw that showed how to do this said the easiest way to get these lines off is grab it with pliers, twist it back and forth a little bit to loosen the connection up, and then pull. Now, the difficulty here, I'm going to try something. Difficulty is it's a little floppy without this additional bolt in. So I'm going to reseat the bolt just for now so I can work on this without it flipping all over. There's one line. The yellow line, I believe, is just a vacuum line. This, I believe, is the fuel line that has the filter on it. And then there's another, I'm not sure what this is. It did come with the kit. It appears to be another vacuum line that has a cap on it. And it tucks up underneath here. It lives underneath there, but it easily comes out. Now, from what I've seen, this is the hardest part, getting the fuel line cluster out of the tank. I'm going to try using a screwdriver to just pry it up and see if that works. I'm replacing these, so if I damage the seal, wow, that came out really easy. I would highly recommend using a screwdriver and just get underneath that cap, because the other person I saw that did this job was struggling with that. Now, I unseated the lines, but that's okay. I'll keep these as spares, just in case. You never know. A piece of wood or something could fly up and damage the new line that I put in. So it's always nice to have an extra set, even if they're old. And then these just seat back down inside. Now, the other struggle was with getting this back in. Let me see how difficult it is to push it in. Got one side in. Normally the trick to these is getting one piece of it in and then working around the circle. So I'm gonna get the back of it in, which is the hardest piece to get to, and use a little bit shorter screwdriver and see if I can work it around and seat it back down in. Yeah, no joke, this is hard. The older one was a little softer. This is a little bit hard. The rubber, I mean. All right, I gotta get some pressure on it. I'm gonna block the view, I apologize. If I let my finger off the back side, it'll pop out. So I'll get the front side in, but the back side will pop out. So you gotta kind of work on the whole thing. Maybe use the tip of the... It's almost there. And there it goes. Now it's down in. Okay. That wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Okay, so here's this one. We know that this seats down underneath here, just like that. The black line is the fuel line that has the fuel filter attached to it. I'm going to make sure there's no junk on it, and then I'm going to put that back onto here. The yellow line is like a vacuum line, probably to allow that bulb to suck air while it's, you know, pulling gas from the tank. Has to be able to put the air back in the tank to pressurize it. So that's what that does. And then I'm gonna seat that on there carefully. Make sure I don't break this housing, otherwise I'll be buying a carburetor. I think that's good enough since it's just an airline. That's that bit. Okay, so let's get the fuel bulb on. And I'm going to use one of the screws here in the easiest corner, which would be right here for me. I'll get one of those screws seated. I'm not going to tighten it down, I'm just going to loosely seat it there, and that'll help align the other ones. And I'm going to get the hardest one, which is this over here in the corner. These appear to be all the same length, so shouldn't matter which socket you put them in. I'll snug this one down, and then I'm going to go kitty corner. I don't know that there's any kind of no seal or anything on here, so it probably doesn't matter what order I put them in, but as with putting on tires, rims, it's a good idea to just kind of snug them so that you get an even seal all the way around. That suck gas up in, that's exactly how that's supposed to work. So I'm gonna remove this bolt now. Theoretically. There we go. And then we will put it back down in. Make sure, there it goes. And those are nice and snug. We've got a new air filter right there. I believe that went on like this. Nope. Got to go in like that. There we go. It's actually a pretty snug fit. And then this seats down in there. But before I put those back on, let me see if I can get the spark plug out. Okay. I'm not sure if I have a socket big enough for that. I don't have my full toolkit here with me, but let's see. Unfortunately, I don't have a deep socket, so I won't be able to replace the spark plug here, but it's a simple, literal, I think this comes gapped. So it would just be a matter of taking that out and then dropping the new plug in, tightening it down, and off to the races. Everything here is pretty clean. My brother gave me this Echo GT 225 because he struggled with keeping it running. And I think it was just this bulb. When they get a crack in them, you get an air leak, and so you don't get a good seal. And a gas engine is a sealed system. It needs to be able to suck air and gas in the appropriate ratio. If there's any kind of leak in the system, like a crack in the bulb, that's enough to actually throw the air gas mixture off. And yeah, you can see it right there. Throw the air gas mixture off, and then it just won't run. It'll start, but then it'll choke out. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave the existing spark plug in here. I started it at his place and it ran for a bit, so I think the plug is fine. I'm gonna keep the spark plug and all the existing parts that I pulled out of here. I'll put them back in this bag that I got. I may clean up this air filter before I do that, but I'll keep all those together. That's garbage, can be thrown away. And the rest of these lines I'll put back in here. Should I need to, like I said, do a quick replacement, at least I've got some working parts. They may not be the best parts, but they're working. And I'll be able to get back up and running quickly without having to order something. So I highly recommend, if you're doing one of these, If you've got a broken part, toss it. You don't want to be frustrated because you try to replace, do a field level replacement like that, and then you put a broken part in and you get the same problem you had before. But anything that is a fully functional part, go ahead and throw it in a bag and throw it in a corner. You never know when you might need it in a pinch. And it saves you having to order something right away. You can still order the new parts if you want to, but you can get back up and running quickly. And then you've got those replacement parts in a pinch. So I'm gonna tighten this down. We'll try and gas her up here a little bit. We've got fuel in the tank, enough to give it a test. Okay, so we've got here on the GT225 cold start, which is what we're talking about here. I'm gonna pump this 3 or 4 times. That should be good enough. I see gas coming back through the line, which means there's enough in the carburetor to start it. And let's see what happens. Now what I should do is pull it a few times and hear it start to chug, and then stop it and turn off the cold start. The other interesting thing about these is they have a hard on-off switch. All the other lawn equipment like I have has got a spring-loaded switch that you basically pull back to stop it, and then you don't have to turn it on. It's automatically on. This is actually a hard switch, so back is stop and forward is on. I'm not sure if I like that placement. I'll probably slide it back a little bit, but for now that's okay. Let's see how it does. That sounded like it. All right. All right, so you can see it runs now. There's still something not quite right with it. I think I need to play with the carburetor mix. I'll have to read up on the how to adjust the carburetor on this, because it starts to choke itself out at higher RPMs. So something's not set right. Let's see if I can get it to start up again without a whole lot of effort. When it's cold, you got to kind of go at it slowly, let it warm up, and then gradually increase the RPMs on the engine so that it gets into itself. The oil is mixed in with the gas in these 2-cycle engines, and so when they sit for a while, the cylinder gets dry. If you try to hammer it right away too fast, there's not enough oil on the cylinder, and you'll seize it up and it'll choke itself out. So that's why you saw me running it like that. But let's see if we can just start it up without all of that rigmarole now that it's warm. Alright, so it started right up again, which is great. But again, there's something going on with that carburetor. It's not quite right. So I'm gonna go ahead and do some research and figure out how to adjust that and get this thing running the way it should be running, but it's already 1,000% better than it was. I was able to adjust the low idle. That's the idle when it's just resting. And I tried to adjust the high idle, but apparently the GT25 and the SRM 225, they have the high idle adjustment hidden under a little plastic cap. I was able to budget a little bit by using a very tiny screwdriver and push down in there to put pressure on the cap. And I think I moved it a little bit, but it still bogs out when I pull the trigger all the way back. Now the good news is I got it so that I could pull the trigger partially back, and it's about right for me to stick one of my fingers underneath the trigger, and it holds it at high idle. I'll show you that in a second. I could probably, the guy that I saw online recommended heating up a screwdriver and getting it down in there so that you can get a hold of the plastic cap, and then cooling it off so it sticks to the cap and pulling the cap out, which I don't really have a full garage or the tools to do that kind of stuff, and I don't want to mess up something that I'm not going to be able to get back. I have it working. It works well enough that it's very usable, and I'll show you that here. I don't want to mess with it too much more. But I think the parts bag that I got here was about $12.99 on Amazon. And so I took a string trimmer that was almost useless because you couldn't hold the trigger down enough and get enough fuel in it to actually weed whack for a sufficient period of time to do anything. And I made it a usable piece of equipment. So that's a win in my book. It's not perfect, and I may spend a little more time on it later, but here's the results. Now, if you remember, I had a hard time starting it before. Now, I don't even have my hand on the trigger. It's warm. I've been running it, so. Low idle is set so that the head doesn't even turn. That's where you want it. And then for high idle, if I put my finger under the trigger here, it runs perfectly well. I still have a problem with So with the trigger completely depressed, you're looking at my navel. With the trigger completely depressed, it's still a problem, but this gets me a workable machine that I can use to string trim my yard, because I had it mowed before I got here, but it's getting in pretty rough shape, so I need to work on it. A little bit of time, a little bit of money, and some patience, and you can take an unworking piece of equipment and turn it into something good. I like to look at garage sales, estate sales and stuff like that. You can pick things like a string trimmer that won't start. You can pick them up pretty cheap. And as long as you know how to diagnose the issue, like I figured out that it was this little bulb, so I bought the kit. I could have bought just the bulb for a couple of dollars, but for $12 I was able to get everything, including new spark plug and a new air filter. So as long as I'm going to be in there taking it apart, why not refurb the whole thing, and then I'll get a bunch of more years of life out of it. So that's what you can do with a little ingenuity and some time and just a few pennies. You can get some good working equipment. All right, I hope you guys like this video. Let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe, please, if this helped you out. Thanks.